the primary killer
Here we
that
go.
that Kohberger is being compared to is none other than Ted Bundy.
Fyodor.
And there he is. There's Ted Bundy. Um, and I gotta say there are some similarities, but
A
I think
few.
there's hardly a parallel there. So Kohberger was a PhD student at the Department of Criminal Justice and Criminology at Washington State University, which is only 300 miles from Bundy's alma mater. Bundy received an undergraduate degree from the University of Washington, where he majored in psychology before moving into law school at the University of Utah. Bundy was also intelligent. I read that his IQ is around 136.
They
Not sure where Kohberger was, but I'm sure Kohberger is higher than average.
Yeah, they always band around that he was a genius, but he was just mediocre. Like Bundy
Well,
was just mediocre.
I don't think 136 is genius level. I think you got to be
No.
over 150 for that.
Yeah, I
Like,
mean he's like well read, but he's by no means an Einstein. He's not a genius.
no, I don't think so at all. But I mean, I think he's definitely more intelligent than Richard Speck.
Of
That's
course.
not
Well, I
saying
mean
much.
Bundy didn't drop out of school at the age of 13.
Now, Bundy stalked and killed college students, which Kohberger is accused of doing the same. But the question is, did he really stalk? Because most of his victims were random and opportunistic.
Yeah, complete. He was a complete predator. Like that whole thing where he would go out to the lake and he would have a cast on his arm, and then he would. It's nearly like chucking a cast into a pond. You're waiting to see who will come to you, who will bite, so to speak.
Yeah. So Bundy was a serial killer, not a mass murderer. He was a serial killer and a rapist
A
of over
sexual
30
sadist.
women whom he confessed to. I'm sure there's many more. Now, Kohberger, on the other hand, stalked these three women. He definitely cased the house, and then he brutally murdered them. He didn't rape them. He didn't curl one out on one of their corpses like Bundy purportedly did.
He did. He definitely shit on a few of the crime scenes, actually.
Yeah, you know. By the time Ted Bundy was a teenager living in Washington, he already exhibited signs of the sadistic serial killer that he'd become. He recalled, like in interviews, that he was antisocial. He wandered the streets looking for discarded pornography or open windows through which he could spy on unsuspecting women. He had an extensive juvenile record for theft. Um, he was, and if you look at that, I mean, Kohberger definitely didn't fit that description.
No, it might have been a bit antisocial, but you could also see why he'd be antisocial because he's been bullied. Ted wasn't being bullied.
But Ted was also gregarious, and he had actual relationships with women,
He did. And I
unlike
would also like
Kohberger.
to point out we're missing out the most important thing about Bundy here. He's a fucking necrophiliac.
Oh,
Like
that's another difference.
I don't think Brian was after they died. I don't think he was out there like shagging the dead bodies or taking the heads as a memento to his favorite woods and then having his wicked way with the heads. He wasn't doing that, any of that. Whereas Bundy was compelled to do that.
Yeah, that's I mean, there's a huge difference there. Um, both were interested in crimes. There's a Reddit post that's been going around with Kohberger that's been unearthed after his arrest that where he had been on Reddit asking prisoners about their questioning about their crimes or people in general, people who'd been to prison about, how often their crimes were committed, how their victims were targeted, and how someone would leave a crime scene. But this is for his master's thesis. People are trying to use it like, oh God, the guy was so obsessed with crime, he's going onto online forums and asking people these questions. Sure, he might have got a little more out of it than most people.
Yeah.
However, he was writing a thesis about the criminal mind.
Yeah,
So
so he needed it.
um Bundy, who was roughly the same age as Kohberger at the time of his first murders, spent time as the assistant director of the Seattle Crime Prevention Advisory Commission in Olympia, Washington,
Yeah, with
where he
Anne
actually
Rule.
wrote a pamphlet for women on rape prevention. There's some irony.
Well, yeah, Anne Rule in her book about Bundy says that it's ironic that he probably helped protect a lot of women against him. At the same time, he's also killing them on the side.
Now, this is where I have to disagree. The mugshots and the physical similarities.
Yeah.
So, if you pull up the picture that's their mugshot here, everyone's going on saying that Kohberger looks just like Bundy. Like they have a very, if side by side, they have a very similar hairstyles and eyebrows. the same thin lips, gaunt
They
cheekbones,
don't.
and matching ears. Do you see that at all?
No, I mean obviously Bundy changed his looks a lot, but he never changed the fact he had brown hair, brown eyes, and brown eyebrows, same as Brian. But Bundy has very thin, unkissable lips, whereas like I would probably kiss Brian. Like he's got kind of kissy lips, but he does have really sticky out ears. Like they're super. He's
I
got a
think they're
jug head.
But look at their noses look different. I don't think Bundy has bushy eyebrows. I think they're both white men, Caucasian, and they have like
Yeah,
brownish hair. I think there's a similarity. Look
different
at
face
Kohberger's
shapes.
eyes. Like they
They're
they
too close
definitely look more.
together.
Yeah, they're too close together. They look sunken in. They do. I think Bundy is way more attractive.
I would
Yes.
say out of the two of them, I would like fuck or marry or kiss. I would probably marry Bundy and I would kiss Brian.
And fuck Richard Speck.
Well, I think I would have no choice.
But I just don't see it. I don't know. I know people are like, oh, they look, they're like
They do not.
they resemble each other completely. A striking resemblance, which I don't even think Bundy has gaunt cheekbones.
Well, I mean, when he had to lose all the weight for his escape, yeah, he was gaunt as fuck then, but he'd lost like, I don't know, how many pounds, like 50 pounds. So yeah, he's gaunt, but he's not gaunt. I mean, Bundy always looks healthy to me.
But if you go on Twitter, I mean, these Twitter
Oh,
users think they're like twinsies.
they're not
The other
twinsies.
person that they think Kohberger looks like is an actor named Pablo Schreiber, who I'd never heard of. But apparently he played the serial killer that tormented Benson on SVU.
Again, I have no idea about any of that. Nah,
I
I can
don't
kind of
know.
see it, but at the same time, no. I think this actor looks more like Brian than Bundy.
Yeah, but once again, like tall, thin, white guy with brown hair.
It's kind of like when when you look at somebody from Asia and you're like, you don't know where they're from. And you're just like, they're a Chinaman. Because we're white, we're like, they look completely different. But if we
I mean,
weren't
these are all
white,
the
would we not be saying, yeah, they look exactly the same to me, bro?
these are all the Twitter and Reddit sleuths. Personally, if you ask me, I think he looks like the OxyContin version of Josh Groban.
Josh
So
Groban's so
like, look at Josh
cute.
Groban. Think about if you cut his hair, give
He's
him like, I
awesome.
don't know, 6 months worth of Oxy. I think he would look just like Kohberger.
I see that. I see your joke. But Josh Groban is like, everyone knows he's a sweetheart. So I'm not taking the implications very well. Thank
Josh
you.
Groban isn't a sweetheart. That's an act.
It's what? You think it's an act? He's really funny when he does all the shows. He's so funny for a Canadian. For a Canadian, he's hilarious.
Um, someone tweeted on Twitter, I'm creeped out by the similarities with Ted Bundy. Both studied psychology and criminology at University of Washington, which he didn't go to. Kohberger didn't go to University of Washington. She said, "I was a Chi Omega sorority member in the '90s, and we never forgot what Ted did."
Right? Okay, get over it. I mean, even the sorority where Bundy killed other girls is still a fucking sorority. Time moves on. Like, lightning isn't going to strike twice. Although it kind of did.
John Henry Brown here, Bundy's one-time attorney, told news outlets, you can remove Josh Groban. I
Oh,
can't
I
look
like looking at it.
at. Do you like his music?
No, of course I don't. But I think
Mhm.
he's really funny whenever he's been on like Nevermind the Buzzcocks and all that. He's always got a good attitude.
In early December, John Henry Brown, Bundy's one-time attorney, told news outlets that he believed there were numerous similarities between the Idaho killings and those committed by Bundy. Um, I don't know. Kohberger left behind quite a bit of evidence, you know, but
So
in
did Bundy
fairness,
though.
yeah, but in fairness, don't you think it would have been easier for Bundy to elude capture back then than now?
Yeah, obviously it is, and that's another reason why like the Zodiac is still out there, possibly, you know? Like back then it was
Um,
easier, but nowadays it's way tougher.
Brown said the randomness actually is something that stands out. Of course, most of Ted's misbehavior was random. There were times when Ted would follow people and decide not to kill them. And that was his way of exercising his grandiosity. I can
Hmm.
control life here and there.
All
But
the killers do that. All of them.
how often did Bundy just prey on this random, unsuspecting, attractive college woman.
He would go out, like I said, he
Hunting.
basically went out hunting. Yeah.
I mean, and he often had a ruse. Like he would wear his arm in a sling or a leg in a fake cast and be walking on crutches. And then he was charming and he would like fake the disability to get his victim to help him with his books to his car. And then once he gained their trust, he would strike them over the head with a crowbar or a pipe. And he had actually removed one of the
The door
passenger seat
handles.
in his Volkswagen Beetle.
Yeah.
And so then he would immobilize the victim with handcuffs, and he'd force them in the vehicle, and then they would lay down. He'd lay them down in the car so no one could see them as they drove away. And yeah, I mean, he raped and murdered scores of women this way. Typically he strangled or bludgeoned his victims, as well as mutilating them after deaths or after death. He would return to visit the corpses at the dump sites, sometimes take them home to gain further sexual gratification. That's a serial killer with a perverse sexual,
He's a
obsession.
necrophiliac. Yes.
Necrophiliac. He would, as you mentioned before, he would display their decapitated heads in their apartment. Kohberger did not do any of this.
I would also go so far as, although Bundy never confirmed that he was a cannibal, he was asked about it multiple times and he would just go silent. So to me, yeah, Bundy was probably eating the dead vaginas. I have no doubt that he was taking nibbles out of them.
But as far as we know, Kohberger didn't sexually assault his victims. He didn't mutilate the corpses, and he didn't take a souvenir.
Not taking a souvenir alone to me is like, you are not to me, a serial killer always takes a little memento, be it whatever, even if it's like a necklace that they're going to give to their wives or girlfriends. The fact he took nothing and he's just there for the sheer joy of murder, to me, is like a mass murder. It's like somebody going into a crowded room with a gun and shooting everyone. It's not really, it doesn't take much skill.
Bundy was arrested for the first time August 16th, 1975, at the age of 29. I was actually born that year.
You were.
That's how old I am. He was sentenced to death and died in the electric chair January 24th, 1989. That's 2 days after my birthday. I would have been 13 then.
Wow.
He was age 43. At the time of his execution, he had confessed to 30 murders, though the actual numbers remain unknown. You know what I saw that actually, we should go check this out one of these days, but his Volkswagen's actually on display at the Alcatraz East Crime Museum in Tennessee.
We're definitely going there because there's that little holy trinity of things to see in that part of Tennessee, because there's Dollywood. Then you can drive down to the Alcatraz, and then you know what else is just down along from there? A full-on replica of the Titanic.
What? Yeah, we have to go there. Definitely.
Yeah, it's like a little holy trinity of amazing things to see and do.